school, or maybe you're already into it, we want to make sure you feel supported with resources to make you and your kids successful this school year. So I want to bring in Josh Sky from Free Game Academy. Josh, you are here to talk about some of the resources you guys offer. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you. I think it's kind of a uniquely tricky time, I think, when it comes to school. If the back to school period is always a lot of complaining about not wanting to wake up, a lot of having to kind of establish the routine again of getting back in the classroom. So I think that it's really good that we're having this conversation now when I think that sometimes it can be a very confusing beginning of the year, especially.
Totally. And I think so often you don't know what to use to help support you or your family if you don't know it exists. So, can you give me an overview over some of the programs you guys offer and how they might help families?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think one of the hardest things is that there's just so much information overload and families don't really know what to do or where to find the resources they need. So what Pregame Academy does is it's basically a mix of just academic assistance through tutoring and homework help, but also mentorship. And a lot of what it's doing is just consolidating all of the resources in one place. So where if you go to the Pregame website, what you'll see is a bunch of other resources you can find both from Pregame and also just across the state and the country where you're able to see, okay, this is what my kid needs and here's how we're able to get the help. But also on top of that, there's some more individualized and personalized assistant, which is if you look at something primarily our pit stop pass, what you'll be able to find is tutoring essentially to kind of get your student more ready for the school year, help them catch up on the math or the reading comprehension they might have lost while they were out having fun during summer.
And I think that's so helpful because so often our students may be really good in one subject and maybe they're lacking in another and they just need that help to bring them up to speed. So you touched on free resources you guys offer. I'd like to go over that. What kind of free things do you offer families?
Well, I would say we offer a lot of different free resources. Like I said, if you go to our website, what you'll find is kind of a listing from both the federal government and the state government of all of these different free resources. But as far as free games specifically, you can find out Pit Stop Pass, which is essentially if you go to the website, you can get free tutoring services that have been funded by our sponsors like Krispy Kreme. Or if you go, you'll be able to essentially make appointments to help you with your homework or help you with basically subjects you want to work on. Another thing I'll add to that is that I think that there's this general preconceived notion of okay, maybe my kid's good in this area, they're struggling in this other area. What I'll say that is across the state, we're struggling a lot. Only about 3 out of 10 students are proficient in things like math and reading. So one thing Pregame Academy really wants to do is it wants to level that playing field and make it so students don't have to feel bad about being behind and actually help them catch up before the school year gets started.
That's so important because I can imagine, going back to school can be tough enough. And then if you feel self-conscious about your learning or you feel like maybe you're not up to speed, that can really be demoralizing for students. So what kind of tips do you have for families when it comes to building the confidence of their learners and what you guys do to make sure that they feel successful going into the school year? I know confidence is an inside job, but as you try to prepare them for success, what kind of advice do you give families to help them do that?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important question. If I think so much of it just goes down to the confidence level the student has, because if they don't have that confidence, then they're never going to be able to sit in a classroom and feel like they have the tools necessary to be successful. So in terms of Pregame Academy, I think the biggest thing that we do is we provide the mentorship, which allows students to know that, okay, I might have struggled with this concept once, but now I'm actually making progress through a lot of feedback from our mentors. As far as overall advice goes, though, I think one of the biggest things you can do is establish a routine, and I know it sucks, but a time you want to get up in the morning, establish a daily schedule, and kind of set yourself up to where you already have a lot of the easy things done, essentially, of it's hard to be a student. It's hard to be in a classroom. It's hard to learn. So as much as you can get done beforehand, you want to get done. So like I said, know when you want to wake up, know when you want to do your homework. And I think once a family has established that baseline, it becomes so much easier to do a lot of the harder things. And then I think in terms of that, when you work with Pregame Academy or other forms of resources, it makes it a lot easier to make those hard things significantly easier to facilitate.
Yeah, I would imagine a routine goes a long way, and sometimes we resist a routine, but having one really sets our day up for success. Are there any common hurdles or common themes you hear from families about mistakes they may make in going back to school to help someone who may be listening to this avoid some of those similar pitfalls?
I think part of it is that so many families just go in with no form of preparation because I think that school is stressful and so much of the preparation feels like, okay, I need to get these books, or I need to get these markers, or I need to get these notebooks. Whereas a lot of the preparation I think that families do need is mental. I think an interesting comparison point is sports. If you look at like the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, they're spending 3, 4 months in some form of training camp preparing.
Mhm.
The problem is students don't have a preseason, right? School is their season, but without any form of preparation, they're going in underprepared. And I think that if other professions and other fields are recognizing that, okay, we need time to prepare, what I'll say is that we definitely don't want to gamble with the future of our country, essentially, because education is that important. So I think that as long as a family recognizes that and they're able to say, okay, let's see what maybe we might have forgot over the summer. Let's work to course correct that, and let's work to establish these routines that'll help with being consistent across the duration of the year. Then you've set yourself up for what I think can be a really successful school year and can help you, even if you felt like you were falling behind before, really be up to speed by the time the school year starts.
Ah, so well said. Josh, I want to ask you, what kind of learners does Free Game Academy serve? If parents, guardians, someone's listening to this and they're thinking, hey, I have a kindergartner, or I have an elementary school student, I have a middle schooler, I have a high schooler. Do you help them all? Do you help just some? Tell us about it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that one of the best things about Free Game Academy is that it's so personalized and it's so specific to the individual learner. For example, we actually just launched our new homeschool platform, which is basically helping really all students grades 2 through 12, essentially, called Freedom Academy, where you're able to go and get a fully licensed curriculum, essentially, where you're able to learn everything you would learn, but from the comfort of your own home, which is really helpful for homeschooled families or families that just want to travel more in general. So I think that's kind of one of our bigger new overarching programs. But also, I think that our resources are really applicable to anyone. I think that the Pit Stop Pass is honestly good for anyone who's enrolled in some form of like K through 12 education, in the sense that it'll help them get really caught up. But we also have other programs like our Next Play Mentorship, which is basically just like mentorship through either financial literacy or character education. So I think that free game is really a holistic effort to work on the student as a whole rather than just saying, okay, let's help you in this one specific area. I think if you want help, you can get it at free game. The big thing is you just need to be ready to take the step forward and ask. And if you're unsure, then I think that the pit stop program specifically is a really good way to get that without any form of financial investment, thanks to our sponsors.
It sounds like it's a really good launching pad to some of the other resources you guys may offer, and it's a
Yeah.
good starting point to understand kind of what's next and how it could be beneficial. I love the homeschooling resources you mentioned because I know so many families look for that and look at ways that they can support their learners during non-traditional hours, right? Maybe they're in the classroom learning in the afternoon or a different time, and it's good to have those resources. Josh, is there anything else you want to add that you feel would be of value to families going back to school this year?
Well, I think that it's hard to just like summarize everything, I think, into one sentence. But the one thing I'll say is that I think that school is one of, and this goes both to the families and the students themselves, school is one of the most important things you will ever be participating in, because I think that education is the elevator to success. And sometimes there can be a lot of reluctance to, want to go back to school. And I understand it because obviously no young student is like, I love homework. But I think that when you participate in school and when you down the line start seeing the benefits, you'll realize that it is really important. And I think that just approach it with as much joy as possible. Try to find fun amidst sometimes the stress. I think that's something free game really emphasizes. And I think that as long as you go in with a good mindset and you realize that school is something a lot of people don't have access to, it'll kind of just get you in the right headspace to have as successful of an academic year as possible.
Gratitude changes everything, and how we approach something allows our students to follow our examples. So I love it. Josh, thank you so much for sharing this with us. You guys, if you're streaming along, we'll be posting this on fox5atlanta.com so you can watch this video again. But for now, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll see you on the other side of this.